There's a kind of tired that sleep doesn't fix. I know that now. I didn't know it 5 years ago, when my wife Barbara was first diagnosed. Back then I thought tired meant you needed more sleep, more coffee, maybe a weekend away somewhere quiet. I thought tired was something you could solve. It isn't. It's the kind of tired that settles into your bones around 3:00 in the morning when you hear her moving around in the hallway, and you lie there for 2 full seconds, just 2, before you get up, because those 2 seconds are all you let yourself have. It's the kind that follows you into the shower, into the car, into the grocery store where you stand in the cereal aisle for 4 minutes because you cannot for the life of you remember what brand she used to like before all of this started. It's the kind that makes you forget your own birthday but somehow remember every single medication Barbara takes, the dosage, the time, the side effects, the name of the pharmacist at the Walgreens on Meridian Avenue who always puts the white bag in the same spot on the counter, so you don't have to ask. I remember every detail of her life. I'm not sure I remember much of mine anymore. Barbara and I had been married 41 years when her Alzheimer's diagnosis came through. She was 67. The neurologist at the Indiana University Health Clinic on North Capitol was a careful man, the kind who chooses every word deliberately, and even he seemed to pause just a half beat longer than usual before he said it out loud. Like even he, who must say that word dozens of times a year, still felt the weight of it landing on the 2 people sitting across the desk from him. We drove home mostly in silence. Barbara held my hand the whole way. She was still sharp enough then to understand what had been said, sharp enough to be afraid, and I think that was in some ways the hardest version of it, when she knew, when she could see what was coming and couldn't stop it, and neither could I. I retired from my job at the City of Indianapolis Water Utility about 8 months after her diagnosis. 33 years. I had a pension coming, a modest one, and we had about $300,000 in a 403B retirement account I'd been contributing to since my mid-30s. It wasn't a fortune, but it was ours. It was a result of brown bag lunches and used cars and 1 vacation a year, usually somewhere within driving distance, and Barbara clipping coupons out of the Sunday paper every single week without fail. We had built something careful and steady, and I had believed, I genuinely believed, that it would be enough. Our son Nathan had moved back to Indianapolis 2 years before Barbara's diagnosis. He'd been living in Denver, working some kind of consulting job that he described differently every time someone asked about it. He came back saying he wanted to be closer to family. He was 38, unmarried. He had a way of making every room feel slightly smaller when he walked in. Not because he was loud, but because he was always watching, always calculating something behind those eyes, something you couldn't quite name. I want to be fair to him. I want to tell this the right way. He was helpful. In the beginning, he was genuinely helpful. He picked Barbara up from her memory care group on Tuesdays when I had physical therapy for my knee. He fixed the gutters. He sat with her sometimes in the evenings and watched old game shows, the ones she still recognized, and that was something real. She smiled at him. She called him by name right up until last year. So when he came to me about 6 months after I retired, with a folder, an actual manila folder, organized, tabbed and sat down at my kitchen table and talked to me about financial planning, I listened. I was grateful even. He said he'd been doing some research, that he was worried about how quickly memory care costs could add up, that he wanted to make sure Barbara and I were protected. He had printed out articles. He had numbers. He wasn't wrong about the numbers. Memory care in Indiana runs anywhere from $5,000 to $9,000 a month, depending on the facility. I had done my own research. I knew what we were looking at. He suggested that it might make sense for him to have access to our accounts, not control. He was careful to say, just access, so that if something happened to me, if I got sick or had an accident, Barbara's care wouldn't be interrupted while the lawyers sorted everything out. He talked about a durable power of attorney. He said he'd already looked into it, that it was a simple process, that he could get the paperwork together. I said I'd think about it. He came back 2 weeks later with the paperwork ready. I want to stop here and tell you something, because if you are listening to this and you have a parent who is aging, or you are the one who is aging, I want you to hear this clearly. I am not a naive man. I spent 33 years working in municipal government. I've seen slow-moving bureaucratic fraud. I know what it looks like when someone is building something piece by piece, each piece looking innocent on its own. I know that, and I still didn't see it. That's the thing about it being your own child. Your brain just refuses. It keeps finding other explanations. He's being responsible. He's worried about his mother. He loves us. He's not that person. Not Nathan. Not my son. I signed the power of attorney papers at the kitchen table. Nathan said he'd take them to the notary at the UPS store on 86th Street the next morning. I said fine. What I didn't know, what I had no reason to think about at the time, is that a power of attorney must be signed in front of the notary. Not before. Not taken in afterward, already signed. The notary is supposed to witness the signature, verify your identity, confirm you're acting without coercion. That's the whole point of the notary. What Nathan did was take my already signed signature to someone who stamped it anyway without witnessing anything. Which means they committed fraud, and which means, as I would find out much later, that document was never legally valid. But I didn't know that yet, and Nathan was counting on that. The first 6 months, nothing seemed unusual. He helped pay a couple bills. He said he was keeping track of things, organizing statements, making sure the insurance payments didn't lapse. I was so consumed with Barbara, her appointments, her medications, her good days and bad days, the grief of watching someone you love become someone slightly different each week, that I was grateful to hand off anything. Even one thing. Just one less thing to carry. I didn't look at the account statements carefully. That's on me. I know that now. My daughter Karen lives in Fort Wayne, 2.5 hours away. She'd been calling more often since Barbara's diagnosis, making the drive down once a month, sometimes more. She and Nathan had never been particularly close. A 10-year age gap will do that. But she was civil to him. She trusted me to handle things. She didn't want to interfere. Her husband, my son-in-law Paul, is a quiet man. An accountant. He doesn't say much unless he has something worth saying, which is the kind of person I have always respected. He and I got along from the very first time Karen brought him home. He has a steadiness to him. He notices things. It was Paul who called me on a Tuesday evening in March, about 14 months after Nathan had been managing the accounts. He didn't call to alarm me. He said he'd been going over some tax documents he was preparing for us. Karen and I had asked him to help with our taxes that year, and he'd noticed something in the 403B statements that didn't look right to him. He said he wasn't sure. He didn't want to jump to conclusions, but he thought I should log in and take a look at the transaction history directly. He stayed on the phone with me while I did it. I remember sitting at the kitchen table with my reading glasses on and the laptop open, and Paul's voice on the other end, quiet and steady, and watching the screen load. And I remember the moment I saw the numbers. The withdrawals. 11 of them over 14 months, each one between $8,000 and $18,000, all transferred to an account I did not recognize. My hands went cold. I asked Paul if he was seeing what I was seeing. He said yes. I sat there for a moment. I think I was waiting for an explanation to appear, something that would make sense of it. Some automatic transfer I'd set up and forgotten, some fee I'd misunderstood. Nothing appeared. Paul said gently that I should not contact Nathan yet. He said I should call my bank first thing in the morning and flag the transactions, and I should also call an attorney. He said he could help me find someone if I needed it. He said, and I will not forget this. He said, "I'm sorry, Dad. I'm so sorry you're dealing with this." He called me Dad. He has called me that for 16 years, and I don't think I'd ever needed to hear it as much as I needed it right then. The next morning I called the bank before it was even fully light outside. The woman I spoke with in the fraud department was named Diane, and she was thorough and kind and completely professional. She confirmed that 11 transfers totaling just over $141,000 had left the account over the past 14 months, authorized through power of attorney documentation that had been submitted in Nathan's name. $141,000. Barbara's care. Our retirement, the result of 33 years of brown bag lunches and used cars and one vacation a year. Gone. I retained an attorney that same week. Her name was Margaret, and she had been practicing elder law in Indianapolis for 22 years. And she looked at the power of attorney document Nathan had used and told me within about 20 minutes that it was invalid. She explained why the notarization had been done improperly. The signature had not been witnessed. And she told me that this actually worked in my favor legally because it meant Nathan had been operating without any legal authority at all. Every one of those transfers was unauthorized. Every one of them was theft. It also meant someone at that UPS store had committed notary fraud, which became its own separate thread of the investigation. Margaret filed an emergency motion to freeze the accounts Nathan still had access to. The Marion County Prosecutor's Office opened a criminal investigation. I gave a statement. Paul drove down from Fort Wayne and sat with me through most of it, just present, just there, which was more than I can adequately describe. I had to tell Karen that was one of the harder conversations of my life, calling my daughter and telling her what her brother had done. She cried. She was quiet for a long time. And then she said she was coming down that weekend. And she did. And she sat with her mother and held her hand and didn't say much. And I think she was doing the same thing I had been doing, which is trying to reconcile the person who did this with the person she remembered. I had to tell Barbara's care team as well, because there had been a period of about 3 months when Nathan had been slow paying the facility, and I hadn't known, and they had been patient, but they needed to know the full picture. That conversation was humiliating in a way I hadn't anticipated, not because they were unkind, they weren't, but because I had not protected my wife. I had handed the responsibility over and I had not checked, and that is something I will carry. The criminal investigation took 7 months. I will spare you most of it, because it is mostly waiting and paperwork and attorneys calling with updates that rarely feel like progress, until suddenly, one day, they do. Nathan was charged with financial exploitation of an endangered adult, which is a level 3 felony in Indiana, and theft over $50,000, which is a level 4 felony. He was also charged with exploitation of the invalid POA, a separate count. He did not take a plea deal initially. He retained a private defense attorney and maintained for several months that the transfers had been authorized, that I had known, that it was a misunderstanding. I had not known. It was not a misunderstanding. The case went to trial in October. I testified. I sat in a witness chair in a Marion County courtroom and answered questions about my wife's diagnosis and my retirement account and my own son. And I said what was true. And I did not look at him while I said it because I could not afford to. I had to just look at the prosecutor and say the words. He was convicted on all counts. He was sentenced to 6 years with 2 suspended, meaning he would serve a minimum of 4. The court also ordered restitution of the full $141,000 plus interest. Whether I will ever see all of that money, I genuinely don't know. Restitution orders and actual recovered funds are 2 very different things, and Margaret was honest with me about that from the beginning. The $141,000 is not the whole of what he took. I want to be clear about that. What he took that cannot be quantified is the 18 months I spent not being fully present with my wife because I was consumed by this. The energy. The sleep. The trust, not just in him, but in my own judgment, which took longer to rebuild than I expected. I am 69 years old. Barbara is in a memory care facility on the north side of Indianapolis now, a good one. And she has good days and she has days when she doesn't know my name, and I go every single day. Every day, I sit with her in the common room and I hold her hand, and sometimes she looks at me with something in her eyes that I believe is recognition. Even if she can't find the word for it, and that is enough. It has to be enough. Paul helped me consolidate what remained of the accounts and set up a proper legal trust. The kind I should have set up from the beginning. Margaret drafted it. It has provisions, real ones, with oversight built in. No single person has unchecked access to anything. It costs money to set up, but it cost far less than trusting the wrong person. If you are in a situation like the one I was in, a spouse with a serious diagnosis, a child who offers to help, a folder of paperwork on your kitchen table, I want you to hear this, not as a warning that comes after the fact, useless and too late, as something you can actually use right now, today. Do not sign a power of attorney at your kitchen table. Go to an independent attorney, not a notary at a shipping store, an elder law attorney who represents you and only you, who has no relationship with the person who will be named in the document, and who can explain every word of what you are signing before you sign it. If someone will be managing your finances, set up a system where you receive monthly statements directly. Set up transaction alerts through your bank, a text or email for every withdrawal over a certain threshold. 15 minutes of setup could have saved me everything. A living trust is not just for wealthy people. It is a structure that keeps your assets protected and your intentions clear and your wishes legally enforceable. An attorney who specializes in elder law can walk you through the difference between a revocable trust and a durable power of attorney and which combination makes sense for your situation. And if someone in your life, someone you love and have loved for decades, offers to help in ways that slowly, quietly limit your visibility into your own finances, listen to that feeling in the back of your mind, the one that you keep finding reasons to dismiss. Listen to it. Paul noticed. An accountant doing routine tax paperwork noticed something that I had missed for 14 months because I was grieving and exhausted, and because my brain refused to look at my son and see what he was doing. I am grateful for Paul every day. I am grateful for Karen, who came and sat with her mother and didn't make me feel alone in this even when I felt completely alone. I am grateful for Margaret, who knew exactly what to do when I had no idea where to start. I am working on being at peace with the rest of it. I won't tell you I'm there yet. I won't tell you the anger is gone, or the grief, or the particular kind of sadness that comes from realizing that someone you raised and fed and loved and believed in was, in the end, calculating the value of your retirement account while you were counting out Barbara's medications on a Tuesday morning. But I am still here. Barbara is still here. And the story isn't over yet. If this reached you today, if something in it sounded familiar, if you're sitting somewhere right now thinking about a folder of paperwork you signed without reading carefully, or a child who offered to help in ways that started to feel like they were helping themselves, please talk to someone, an attorney, a trusted friend, your bank. Make one call today. You worked too hard for too long to lose it to someone who was supposed to love you. Thank you for being here with me. I'll see you on the next one. I've had a lot of time to think about how this happened. Not just the legal side of it, not just the numbers, but how a person gets to the point where they do what Nathan did. And I keep coming back to the same thing. It didn't start with the money. It started long before that, with small decisions, small justifications, small ways of looking at another person and deciding that what they have matters more than who they are. That's what greed actually is, I think. It's not a sudden thing. It's a slow erosion, 100 little choices that each seem minor, until one day you're standing in a courtroom being convicted of stealing from your own father while your mother is in memory care down the street. Nathan didn't become that person overnight. He became that person one rationalization at a time, and the saddest part of it isn't what he did to me. It's what he did to himself. He had a father who would have given him almost anything he asked for honestly. He had a mother who still called his name on her good days. He chose this anyway. That's a weight he'll carry long after the prison sentence is done, and no court order put it there. He put it there himself. I think about Paul a lot. An accountant doing routine paperwork on a Tuesday evening, catching something that I had missed for over a year. He didn't have to dig for it. He wasn't investigating anyone. He was just doing his job carefully and honestly. And because he was paying attention, everything changed. That's what integrity actually looks like in practice. It's not dramatic. It's just a person doing the right thing, even when no one asked them to and nothing required it of them. I spent a long time being angry at myself for not seeing it sooner. For signing papers at a kitchen table, for being too exhausted and too trusting and too consumed with Barbara's care to look at a bank statement carefully, and I've had to make my peace with that, because the alternative, carrying that guilt indefinitely, doesn't serve Barbara, and it doesn't serve me, and it doesn't change a single thing that happened. What I know now is this. The exhaustion I felt wasn't weakness. It was the natural result of doing something genuinely hard, alone, for years. And people who are exhausted make themselves vulnerable. That's not a character flaw. That's just being human. What matters is what you build around yourself when you recognize that vulnerability. Legal structures, trusted people. Systems that don't depend entirely on your own vigilance at 3 hours in the morning. I rebuild. Slowly, imperfectly, but I rebuild. The trust with proper legal oversight, the accounts with alerts and transparency, the relationship with Karen and Paul that has only grown stronger through all of this. None of that erases what was lost. But it means something was built from the wreckage, and that matters to me. Barbara squeezed my hand last Thursday when I walked in. She didn't say my name, but she squeezed my hand. And I thought, that's what I'm here for. Not the money, not the account balance, not any of it, just that. I'm still here. We're still here.